Welcome, Vintage Hollywood Archive. Debbie Reynolds won over Americans' heart with her breakout role in Singin' in the Rain, starring as Kathy Selden, alongside leading man Gene Kelly. From then on, Reynolds was a household name. She was known for taking on characters in comedies and musicals, including ones with a cheery disposition. Sadly, her off-screen life was far more complicated than that of her girl-next-door characters. How did Debbie Reynolds forgive Elizabeth Taylor for ruining her marriage? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Hollywood's biggest celebrity breakup. Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher. To be an A-lister in Hollywood, Debbie Reynolds had to have thick skin. Debbie Reynolds spent decades in the public eye. The 1950s cheating scandal between Eddie Fisher, his wife Debbie Reynolds, and her best friend Elizabeth Taylor is one of the most notorious celebrity dramas of all time. From plane crashes to catching cheating spouses red-handed, it's got all the ingredients of a good old-fashioned celebrity showdown. It is impossible to overstate the public's appetite for this deliciously lurid story. Debbie endured a lot of hardships in her life, like her multiple failed marriages to Eddie Fisher, Harry Carl, and Richard Hamlet. Even though Debbie's love life caused her a lot of pain, she wanted to believe that she had found her Prince Charming when she first met Eddie. However, the "Oh, My Papa" singer ended up showing her his true colors when he left her for her friend Elizabeth Taylor in 1958. Debbie Reynolds embodied the cheerful bounce and youthful innocence of the post-World War II era, energizing her films through sincere charm and energy. One of a long line of girls next door like Doris Day and June Allison, Reynolds was never as sultry as Day could be and was less of a tomboy than either. She was often cast as a sincere young adult in the throes of puppy love, rather than the virgin chased by rogues like Day or the placid housewife like Allison. Debbie Reynolds, or Mary Frances Reynolds, was born April 1, 1932 in El Paso, Texas. She was born toward the end of the Great Depression, and her family was quite poor. Her father was a carpenter, and her mother worked in a laundry, but this hard living didn't faze the young girl. Reynolds has said that her parents were always happy and devoted to her, and that there was always food on the table. Reynolds' working-class family moved from Texas to California in the late 1930s. Her career started in 1948, when at 16 years old, she won the Miss Burbank beauty pageant in California. She was spotted by Warner Brothers scouts and offered a $65 a week contract. She later admitted she had only entered the competition because of the free scarf and blouse being offered to contestants. In 1948, she made her movie debut in June Bride. She played supporting parts in 4 musical comedies before her breakthrough role in 1952 as the ingenue who was made into a star in Singin' in the Rain. Reynolds' bright-eyed personality charmed movie audiences, who soon claimed her as America's sweetheart. She became a top box office attraction during the 1950s, appearing in a series of light comedies. Despite her lengthy career, she never won an Academy Award. She was nominated for Best Actress in The Unsinkable Molly Brown in 1965, but lost to Mary Poppins' Julie Andrews. At the 2016 Academy Awards, she was honored with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award. From the moment that Debbie Reynolds first stepped on screen, one thing was clear: America had a new sweetheart. With her girl-next-door looks, charm, and talent, she quickly became a Hollywood sensation. Yet behind closed doors, Reynolds' life was tainted with scandal, heartbreak, and struggle, but she handled everything with grace and dignity up until her final tragic hours on Earth. Around the time she made Singin' in the Rain, Debbie Reynolds met and fell in love with a young singer and actor named Eddie Fisher. Both stars were young, beautiful, and wildly popular. To everyone on the outside, it seemed like a match made in heaven, until someone gave Reynolds a dire warning about her paramour. Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher, from America's favorite couple to the epicenter of Tinseltown's most scandalous love affair. Reynolds and Fisher's romance began in the early 1950s, uniting two A-list celebrities of the day. Although he may not be as well remembered today, Eddie Fisher was once one of Hollywood's top entertainers, a singer with over 30 hits and millions of records sold. At one point in his life, he had more hits than the Beatles and Elvis combined. Like many before him, Fisher first saw Reynolds on a film screen. A chance meeting between the two occurred in 1951 when they were both in Korea to entertain wounded soldiers. 3 years later, they were reunited when Fisher paid a visit to the set where Reynolds was shooting the romantic comedy Athena. "He asked me to marry him on our third date," Reynolds once claimed. "Then, about a month later, he gave me the biggest diamond ring I'd ever seen in the history of the world, something like 11 carats. They were married on September 26, 1955. During the early years of their marriage, Reynolds and Fisher lived a charmed Hollywood life and were often photographed in the company of their good friends. In the summer of 1956, Reynolds, pregnant with the couple's first child, Carrie Francis, and Fisher appeared in the feature film Bundle of Joy, a Technicolor musical about the discovery of an abandoned infant and the resultant screwball antics. The film wound up bombing at the box office, and the resultant blowback severely affected both actors' career trajectory, which in turn soured their romance. The only respite that seemed available to the couple were their frequent excursions with another celebrity pairing, producer Mike Todd and Elizabeth Taylor. Reynolds and Taylor became friends in high school, which for them meant attending classes on the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lot, given that they were employees of the film studio. Taylor was already a star in her own right, and Reynolds didn't mince words when it came to describing why they got along so well. However, what started out as a fun sisterhood friendship quickly spiraled into a dark web of disappointment and betrayal. "I went to MGM when I was around 17, and Liz was there too, but she was already a star," Reynolds said. "We went to school together on the lot when she was in between films. I was just a beginner, and she and I were not in any manner alike, but we got along very well because I was in awe of going to school with Elizabeth Taylor. And if anyone said they weren't, then they were lying, or blind." And it wasn't just a high school friendship they had. When Taylor married Mike Todd in 1957, her third marriage, Reynolds was her matron of honor, and Fisher, whom Reynolds married 3 years prior, was the best man. The Singin' in the Rain star and the Wish You Were Here singer even named their son after Mike Todd, who died in a plane crash in 1958. Almost 4 weeks after the birth of his namesake, Todd was killed when the private plane he was traveling aboard crashed in New Mexico. Reynolds sent her husband to comfort Taylor, and that's when the affair that ended her marriage began. Despite her misplaced faith in her husband, Reynolds finally grew suspicious of his continued absence and the frequency in which he was spotted in what some gossip mavens were calling romantic clinches with the supposedly grieving widow. I'd heard the rumors and he had gone to New York for some business, but I didn't know it was monkey business. A secret romance blossomed, and in turn, the love triangle rocked the movie business. It wasn't until Reynolds rang Taylor's hotel room one day and Fisher answered the phone that she discovered the affair was real and not rumor. Suddenly, a lot of things clicked into place, revealed Reynolds to the Daily Mail. I could hear her voice asking him who was calling. They were obviously in bed together. I yelled at him, "Roll over, darling, and let me speak to Elizabeth." Fisher left Reynolds for Taylor just a month after the death of Todd, and she recalled, "I was the last to find out about the affair. There had been hints in the papers, and I had noticed that when I turned up at functions or parties on my own, my friends were whispering. Although I didn't want to find out the truth, I had to face up to it. Even so, it was a great shock to find them together. It left me shattered." Reynolds was devastated over the infidelity. Eddie and Elizabeth were vilified. Eddie was declared a philandering, opportunistic loser, and Elizabeth was labeled a bad girl, home-wrecking slut. Debbie, the good girl, the innocent, unsuspecting victim, and single mom, was globally embraced with love and sympathy. Reynolds remained publicly quiet on the subject, as Fisher and Taylor did most of the talking. The public interest in the love triangle only grew, peaking when Reynolds agreed, after a year of hesitation, to a quick divorce so Fisher and Taylor could wed. The scandal would have a direct effect on the careers of all involved. For Reynolds and Taylor, the public ordeal would only serve to make them bigger draws at the box office, commanding higher salaries per picture. Fisher's star power, however, was forever tarnished by his decision to leave his wife and children for Hollywood's most glamorous actress. His variety TV program was not renewed in 1959, and he was soon back to touring nightclubs and lounges. Taylor and Fisher's marriage didn't last long, although it was longer than his marriage to Reynolds. The two stars were married from 1959 to 1964, their divorce being prompted by Taylor's infamous affair with co-star Richard Burton while filming Cleopatra in 1963. Reynolds and Fisher's divorce was heavily publicized by the press, given that they were one of Hollywood's favorite couples. Reynolds and Taylor were friends before they ever married Fisher. However, and years after the dust settled on the chaos that was their famous love triangle, the two actresses mended their friendship. Even though the love triangle was an insane tabloid feeding frenzy, Reynolds and Taylor repaired their relationship in later years. The alum went so far as to say that repairing that friendship was more important than her marriage to Fisher ever was. For starters, the star made it clear she never blamed Taylor for Fisher's abandonment of their family. Despite the affair temporarily ending their relationship, she never felt bitter about Elizabeth. "A man doesn't leave a woman for another woman unless he wants to go," she continued. "You know, when Mike Todd died, I sent Eddie to help Elizabeth. I don't think she ever really loved Eddie. He was an interim interest during her mourning period." The former high school pals still weren't friends at this point, but that would change 3 years later when they were coincidentally both on the same cruise ship and decided to effectively say, "Forget about Eddie Fisher," got drunk, and made up. Reynolds was married to businessman Harry Carl at the time, and Taylor had wed Burton in 1964. "We got on the same boat to go to Europe, the Queen Elizabeth," Reynolds recalled. "I sent a note to her, and she sent a note to me in passing, and then we had dinner together. She was married to Richard Burton by then. I had been remarried at that point, and we just said, let's call it a day. And we got smashed. And we had a great evening and stayed friends since then. The actresses maintained their friendship for the remainder of their lives. Reynolds once explained why it was important to let go of her past with Taylor. You have to look at what life is about and is it worth it? And is he worth it? She said. The friendship was perhaps worth more. Taylor tearfully apologized to Reynolds for the affair again. I'm sorry for what I did to you with Eddie, Taylor is quoted as saying to her friend. In 2001, Taylor offered Reynolds refuge at her hotel in Manhattan during the September 11, 2001 attacks. When Taylor died in 2011, she left some of her precious jewelry to Reynolds in her will. Reynolds died of a stroke in December 2016, the day after Carrie died of sudden cardiac arrest. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new here.